Welcome to the 10th weekly guide. This week the focus is on making your own strategies. So this is a bit longer than the previous weeks, and I'm hoping that it will also bring a little bit of insight into what I have been doing previous weeks. Although the strategies for the previous weeks have been not good strategies, just strategies that are good for training purposes. This week I want to go through how to actually make a good build while still sticking to one original idea that you have in mind that you build a strategy around. Like usual, most of the information will be in the written guide, which is linked to in the description. The purpose of this video is to show every single game leading up to the finished strategy. So just to give a little bit of background before looking at the first game. Before looking at this game, what we want to do is first we want an idea. And the idea this time is to counterattack with a warpism when the Zerg moves out and warp in charge slots there. And after I had this idea, which is quite simple, we theory craft and try to think about what tactics this could go well with, what this means, what the requirements for this is, and stuff like that. All of this is in the written guide. But now I want to jump into game and work on these tactics. So that was the purpose of the first game, just trying to experience it and trying to find synergies between the different tactics that I had ideas for. What you want to do in this phase is to try a lot of different openers, try a lot of different follow-ups. Just be don't try to do it the best way, just do it in some way, and maybe you will be surprised about things that are better than you expected, and then you can use that for later. So here I opened with a regular get expand, fast adept scout, very safe so far. Second adept even, and a fast robo. So this is very similar to the 9th weeks, the build from the 9th week, with a fast immortal. So just trying to stay alive and trying to play safe, so that we can make sure that I can practice what I want to practice, rather than just losing to an all-in because I was a little bit too greedy. That would be a waste. Getting the gateways faster than usual, perhaps. Rushing for the +1, because zealots are good with +1 against Zerglings. We also have the charge. So really setting up for this counter as soon as possible was the plan, so that I get experience with it. I'm gonna go through this game as quickly as I can, by the way, because there are quite a lot of them. And the details are not very important. Losing the prism here, so quite disastrous. I just want to show every single game for the sake of completion. Some of them did not help me at all. But I think it can still be perhaps useful to see the complete process. So things didn't go like I wanted, so try to get back to where you want things to be with the second prism, instead of just giving up. So see the attack, this is where we instantly want to move this prism in. That was the plan all along. So this is why we need to gain experience, because as we see, I'm not moving this prism, even though that's the entire plan from the start. Because StarCraft is a difficult game, so not playing it properly. So that's one of the purposes of just trying to do it as much as possible early on, so that you get used to these things. So one takeaway would be to, as soon as you see the opponent move out, you should already trigger that, okay, it's time to get the prism in for a counterattack. So that's the first thing I learned, that you need to actually think about it, not just have the plan, but actually work on executing it when you see the move out of the circ. Here we also see from replay analysis the solids are not doing very much. So it would be nice to micro them once, so that we, instead of having them be stuck here, they would do a lot more if I just walk them to the middle of the mineral line. So that's also a takeaway, that you probably want to micro this once at least. Another nice thing, the salads got recalled. They helped tremendously in the defense. So that's also an important lesson I got from this, that actually I was planning on just counterattacking, but you can actually recall them, and then you're gonna have a lot of units at home. So maybe you don't have to get as much defense as you've expected. Another important lesson, and then we also see these observers, which turned out to be extremely useful. We see where the army is, and we see if the opponent is attacking. So that makes it much easier to use this prism, because in the previous attack I wasn't prepared for the attack, and then the prism didn't do anything. But I noticed that with these observers it's much easier to be prepared and actually use the prism properly, because I know when the opponent attacks. So this is another tactic that I discovered just by experimenting and playing this first game. And at this point I basically see I'm quite far ahead, so I just try to attack and end the game, I think. Not much more interesting from this replay, I think. Yeah. Let's jump to the next. Shout out to Ghosty, by the way, for helping me out with this. Very, very nice to be able to get these games out in a row without having to play different matchups and think about other things. So this time I'll try a Nexus first. I'm trying to change the opening up and see if perhaps this has better synergy with the plan. For some reason, like these things are always so complex that it's very hard to predict which opening suits the style the best. Because we're gonna have a prism going out at maybe minute 5, maybe later, and this is minute 2, so there are so many things that are gonna be happening. There are so many different things that the Sir can be doing, so it's very hard to correctly assess for every single situation to see which opening is best. So it's nice to just try different things, really, and you will be surprised. Alright, so this game I figured that I didn't really have to rush for charge, I can do it a bit later. And instead I wanted to go for a disruptor drop. As I learned from the previous game, the observer is quite nice, so I went for that early. And as usual, when you're doing so many things that are just weird and you're trying to figure out if things are good while playing at the same time, it's very easy to play much worse than you normally do. We saw me in the previous game lose the prism. Here the observer hasn't been scouting. I lost some sentries to some zerglings. Because you're focused on doing other things, and that is absolutely fine. And because you're gonna be playing a lot worse, it can be nice to play also against an opponent that is a little bit lower MMR than you are as well, so that you're allowed to do the things that you want to do instead of just having the opponent decide what happens in the game and having them constantly abuse every single small mistake that you're making. Get a second prism. So I noticed that this was a bit awkward, having one prism for harass and another one prepared to counterattack. I don't really have a good setup for this. Or actually I do, I just wasn't using it for some reason. But yeah, right now what I should have is that prism setup. That's what the entire strategy is about, and instead I lost track of that. Also very easy to just forget about what you're actually doing, because you're trying to play so creative. You're trying to do just try things out, and it's hard to do that at the same time as being strict on actually performing the one thing that you want to do. But that's one of the challenges, to choose, to find some kind of middle ground of experimenting and trying things out while being strict about certain things. But it doesn't have to be perfect every game, of course. I'm getting this eventually, at least. So what happened this game is I went for shield upgrades. I had a bunch of prisms, I had prism speed. I went into lots of archons, just because that's something I'm quite comfortable with. And so I noticed here that the lesson I took away from this game is that when I have this threat of the Salot drop, in this game, he put the queens here. Suddenly, that means that when I clear creep here, what normally happens then is, well, then the queens come over and then they just re-creep at the edge here, so it doesn't really matter that its tumors died. But this time, the queens are busy. Or his army would be busy, so it's also easier to get to this point and clear it. So clearing creep, I found, had synergy with this counter threat option. That was an important lesson from this game, something that I had not thought about. And the other really big thing that I noticed was that I've been doing this Archon drop style before, where I mass Archons. Obviously that takes a lot of gas, which can make it tricky, but in this situation I'm throwing away a lot of minerals for the solid counters. So that once again has synergy with this mass Archon style. Also something that maybe I should have predicted. That's always what it feels like. Everything's always obvious, but there's so many different things to think about that you're usually missing a lot of obvious things if you don't just try it. And at this point my opponent is on a low tier army. I'm maxed with 3/3 Archons, so I just hit the max timing with almost no zealots, only a couple here. And the game should end very soon. I just want to show how the micro can look with this type of army, because this is something I decided to choose as a late game. And Broodlords are exposed. Quite sloppy, but it happens. Happens to the best. So yeah, important takeaway. This late game composition timed out with the mineral gas ratio. I also noticed that I was able to take these bases uncontested because I had good creep clear with the main army, partly because of this prism, and I also have this prism scouting. I have the observer scouting, so taking these bases have been much easier than it normally is, which once again has synergy with this late game style, because it allows me to get more gas per minerals, giving me more Archons. I should say as well, the way that I'm presenting it in these videos, it's gonna look very linear, like I'm finding out one thing at a time and it's all coming together into one great puzzle. But the truth is, what I'm actually finding is all kinds of things, and most of them will not be used. For example, I found that Oracle had great synergy with this style as well, but I can't do Oracle and Robo Opener at the same time, so all of the things that I found about the Oracle just had to be thrown away. And when I'm playing this opening, I'm not learning anything about the Oracle, so maybe I should have done a more Stargate plays. But you can't really try everything. You want to start very broad with trying all kinds of different things, and then kind of narrow it down as you go. So I'm trying different variations here. If I remember correctly, maybe I went just one gateway here, or maybe I just went faster third than usual. I don't remember exactly, but I did some different timings of the adept, some different chrono boosts, trying to not have a weakness, because at this stage I was struggling a bit with the opener. We see here that the Zealot is done. The Sentry. Okay, so look, in the previous game what happened is I made 2 adepts, and then they scouted, and then I was blind for a very long time. So then I tried to get a fast Sentry instead this game, so that I can hallucination scout. But that again had pretty big problems, because right now I have not been scouting for a very long time, and I'm taking a third completely blind before the hallucination has reached the other side of the map. And right here I don't even have a forest field, so I would certainly die to a Baneling bust here. And this is one of those things, another another reason that we want to play against lower players at this time. This is something that I know while playing. I can feel that a Baneling Bust would absolutely crush me. It's easy to find problems at this early stage, but that's not what you're really looking for. You're more looking for the positive synergies at this time. And at least I can cross this opener off, so that for the future I can try different things instead. That was my thought process. So again, going back to the fast setup of the counter, having a very fast +1 this time, so I can get faster +2. Lots of sentries, because I have some salots across the map later. I want to have strong defensive units. And here once again I'm using lots of force fields. I don't have any hallucination. I have nothing to scout right now, so this is a really awkward spot for me. Ah, right, I remember this game now. So I wasn't really paying attention. So what happened was I took this completely blind, as I said, which means that if there was a Baneling Bust, I would be completely crushed. So let's say this gas that he's investing in this +1, if that was a Baneling Nest instead, I would be super dead. But this +1 and this late circling, some 30 drones, that he's building did not achieve anything. It almost did, but not quite. So if you're a Zerg and you try to pressure and you just barely don't get through, that means you built a lot of units that could have been runs to achieve nothing, and that's really bad for you. And again, he made even more Zerglings to try and pressure this fast third, but it's absolutely too late. And I'm just super ahead at this point. And because I didn't want to play from a silly situation where I'm super ahead, like you shouldn't play against someone that's a lot worse than you, for that reason also. Like it just gets silly, so I just wanted to end this game. So I decided to make a timing instead to go into the next game and continue practicing the prism counters. I was gonna jump to the next game, but I think this was quite pretty. I just want to look at this again. This donut. All right. Oh, wrong game. I played a ladder game between, which was a PvP, which obviously did not help me. I was happy when I saw it was Namchar, but then I saw he was Protoss. Right, so then I started practicing with Freeman also. Thank you to Freeman for helping me out. And these games were a bit longer. So at this phase, I kind of know what I want. I'm happy with this Archon style as a late game, so I'm trying to continue experimenting with that and seeing how does it work together with the Zealot Prism counter. Is there any synergies I should be aware of? How should it be controlled? Stuff like that is always nice to actually play out instead of theorize, because you will be doing some problem solving in game instead. and things will happen that you will not be able to predict. Once again, I try a different opener, and same problem again. I had to use force fields to defend the space, and I'm completely blind. So once again, I'm not happy with this opener. But try again. Next game will be a different opener. Again, going back to this disruptor drop, it looks like. And at this point, what happened is it looked like I only built one prism. So this is something that I didn't really predict either. I felt that if I have one prism, then I can harass with it, I can do whatever I want, and then I can prism counter when I need to. But that doesn't really work, because the prism has to go home and unload this disruptor before it can set up a counter. So I'm seeing some problems with using this kind of disruptor drop. It forces me to make 2 prisms. And if I go disruptor drop, make 2 prisms, I don't have a Stargate, Mutalisks start getting a little bit scary. So once again, not super happy with this. And also we can see a big difference from the previous games where I played. This time the creep spread is really good. It's starting to become difficult to get the prism across with the salads. And also my composition, like there's so many reasons why this creep is not nice for me. And the truth is, I'm on this. Let's go back a little bit. Another reason I don't like this composition right now is that it's extremely defensive. That's kind of what I planned, right? If the opponent attacks, well then I can deal damage with the prism. If they don't attack, then I need some other plan. And I'm not sure exactly what I'm looking for, but I'm looking to transition to mass archons if they don't attack. So that was my plan at this stage. But this creep spread, we see here that I have a disruptor here. Can't really do too much with the creep. With that one, I have an army consisting of basically just sentries and one more disruptor. I don't even have charge yet. There's absolutely no way for me to walk out on the map and clear this creep. Because the army will be surrounded and it's very weak on creep when surrounded, these units. So again, I'm having some problems with this type of composition where I'm playing defensively with disruptors. It feels good if the opponent attacks. That's what you want. You want the opponent to attack and then you counter with the salads. But if they don't attack, you need something, and this is not looking good yet. So that's what I'm trying to work on, trying to find something that works if the opponent doesn't attack. But I think this game was starting to get a bit more interesting in the later stages. I'm lucky enough that he sacrifices the Hydras which are actually quite good against what I have. And this is when I realized that the salad once again helps me clear the creep. Which was something that I got from just a couple of games ago. Using a distraction here to clear the creep, because what normally would have happened is that these guys have been clearing creep for like a minute now. We can go back and look at that. Of course, I'm not saying that they should have been able to do that, but when you're distracting this much, at least it's more likely that they are allowed to do that. So this prism is really helping with that. So that's the synergy I talked about before. So I'm just testing it out in this game, and it's working well. Because sometimes you think you have some synergy, you think you have some great idea, but then you try it out and it gets completely shut down for another reason that you didn't think about. I added the DTs this game also, which turned out to be interesting. If we look at the creep, I know that I cleared a lot of creep here and here. And there's a couple of tumors left here. So DTs sent to clear it, the final part. It would have been really nice to set up another salad counter right here for more distractions. So this is also, this is interesting in TVC, for example, where it's important to keep track of how much multitasking you have to do and also how much multitasking your opponent has to do. And if there is some window, let's say you have a 15-second window where you're dropping in two different locations, for some reasons, the opponent has a lot to do. That's a great time to do even more if you can. If you're good at dropping, you can send in another drop. If you're bad at dropping, you can send some liberators, which are easy to control for you, but hard to control for the opponent. DTs are one of these units that they're not much better than salads at clearing creep. In fact, the best way to clear creep would have been to have a prism with like 2 salads in, and then to control that perfectly so that if zerglings come, you can save the salads. But if you have DTs in an observer, it just gets a lot harder for the opponents, even though it's not much better, but it's much more APM intensive for the opponent to deal with. This is just one kind of strength that you can measure things in StarCraft. And we see that the prism counter has great synergy with this. It has great strength in the opponent will have to be very distracted. They will have to perform a lot of actions to send the right number of units to defend against it, to look at it, stuff like that. So if you can combine it with these units that are also really annoying to clear, that can have synergies in that aspect also. So that's what I found. That's what I found here. And suddenly the creep is no longer scary. And the army on this side is starting to look scary, and once again we have lots of minerals spare. So in hindsight I can see that it would have been nice to do even more zealot counters with this. And then this is also something that I found which kind of inspired me to use it in the build as well. I chose to split my army in two, so that half of my army can fit inside of these prisms, which means that half of the army is as fast as a prism. So for example, if the opponent is to put half of their army here and half the army here, then I can put half my army here and half my army here, and then suddenly load up these units, fly over here, and then suddenly all of my army is here, and half of their army is still here, because their army is much slower when you're up against Broodlords. And I found that this actually synergizes really well with zealots as well. And once again, if the opponent is out of position, which they might be because they are too distracted by a zealot counter, that's also another way you can win. Just waiting for the opponent to make a mistake. And again, this synergizes with the creep clearing, because suddenly we have two powerful armies, one with powerful pushback, so there's no way for the opponent to jump onto this army, because we have force fields, we have lots of strong archons, we have disruptors that can shoot, and we're much faster than the Broodlords, so there's no way for him to jump on top of this. At the same time, this army doesn't have that much pushback, but instead it's extremely fast. And just as a side note, I'm using rapid fire to pick these archons up. And here we see the opponent split in two, even using a recall, which is not really necessary. I can just fly over here, but recall is even faster. Only works in some situations, of course. And suddenly all of our army is here, and he's just got some of his units here. So I choose to jump on top of this, because the infestors are stuck. So some of the problems that I'm experiencing here is my probe count is really low, which is because the map is quite small, so it's hard to defend everywhere. But this is also interesting. This is when I actually discovered what I talked about before. The fact that this type of split up works extremely well together with this zealot counters. That was not a great example of why. That was very sloppy, but for some reason I saw potential. I don't know why exactly. I guess it was a move like this as well. The zealots are helping out a lot, and they have a lot more damage just straight up than the archons. Per cost, at least. Oh, and right. So a really nice thing about salads is that, as we will see, because of their fast damage, they're really good at a base race. Because you can just send a couple here, send a couple here. They take care of the workers very quickly, they take care of buildings very quickly, compared to the colossi or compared to the sentries, which aren't really doing much here. And when you're playing this style, you need to quite often need to play the space race. So the salads are finding synergy here as well. And unfortunately for the opponent, he just ran out of buildings here. But I'm pretty sure I could have just morphed 10 more Archons and then taken out this army quite easily. So this game really gave me confidence in choosing this late game style. Just gonna keep going. I'm probably about halfway through the games against people. At least in terms of number of games. Right, so the mothership is an idea I had after that game because it would increase my mobility even more. It was very nice to be split up in two different locations, and the mothership would give me the ability to recall and basically have an army in three places at the same time, or at least a threat of having an army in 3 places at the same time. It's not something I actually implemented. One of those ideas that just had to go away. I don't think it's bad necessarily. It's just that you can't really do everything at the same time. So this game, again, Nexus first, I believe. Going for very fast shield upgrades. I think what I wanted this game was to... I felt the thrill from the previous game. That this kind of late game style is really nice, so I just went for that instantly heading for the late game. It looks like I have currently 4 working gateways at 8 minutes almost. Already building Archons, already getting +2 shields. And what I found is that I don't have enough gateways to do the salad counter. So this just doesn't work for my build at all. Sadly, because it would have been nice if you could do that. Obviously, this could be a different strategy. Maybe this would be nice for different reasons. But you should be careful with throwing away the main idea of the build, which is the salad counter. Because you have so many tactics that kind of rely on it. We have a bunch of sentries because we want defenders advantage. We want strong defensive units. We have lots of static defense set up. I don't have that many sentries this game, but I have so many tactics that rely on that, and that's what we wanted in the first place. So you shouldn't be too quick to give up on that. At the same time, if you find another strategy that could be interesting instead, you can absolutely do that afterwards, or just swap to that instead. That's quite common, that you just find something that's more interesting. You find some kind of synergy that you hadn't thought about before while experimenting, and it looks really good, except it doesn't work with the main idea. So then you just give up the main idea and start all over again with the new idea. I didn't see the counterattack, but this happened quite luckily. So the big lesson from this game was that I can't instantly go for this late game with the 4 bases, with the speed prism, with the fast archons, with the observer, partly because look at this creep spread. It will be very hard to deny it. I don't have any way of doing that really. But also the main idea was broken. I have to get more gateways faster to set up this prism counter. So then the question is, what do you sacrifice then? Should you cut the +2 shields? Should you cut the +1 shields? Should you not take the 4th so fast? So that was going through my head at this time. Trying a single gateway after Nexus first this game. I'm getting a Zealot, and I see that I have a bunch of money which I can't spend. So I just take the 3rd, going for a Stargate. Like I said before, I had some ideas with the Oracle, so I wanted to try all of the different openers. But here I've been blind for way too long. Baneling Bust would have probably crushed me right here. That's why I keep the Oracle at home, to be safer against that. Or no, I don't. Never mind. That's why I keep the Oracles at home at this time, and I'm just more and more blind. Kind of a vicious circle. So I'm not happy with this opener. I'm too tempted to go for this timing for some reason. Completely not following the rules of what I'm trying to do here, which is the Zealot counter. Yeah, just go for the attack. Try to be better next game with actually following the plan. I guess the takeaway was that Nexus first into Oracle did not really line up with this strategy, because it was so late. I start the Fleet Beacon because I can get the carrier within, if I chrono boost it 2 times, 44 seconds plus 43 seconds, so like 1.5 minutes. While charge is way more than that away. Well, not that much more, but like 2 minutes with 2 chronos. So like I can get a carrier before I can get any kind of setup like that. So I just thought that it's way too slow. So it's not gonna work anymore because the robo was too late. I think that's what I was thinking. And of course, with the carriers, there's very little synergy with the counterattack with the Zealots, because the Zealots are really good together with carriers in the fight if he attacks with hydras. So I don't want them on the other side of the map. And the prism gets shut down by the corruptors if he makes corruptors before he can attack, so it's not great. So I think I gave up on the Oracle here. I think that's, in hindsight, I think that was a mistake. I think I should have made just gate expand into regular Oracle. I think that would have been a nice build. The main thing with that as well is that it's something that I already know, so I wouldn't have to make something new. So then you save a lot of time if you just use an opener that you already know. But I kind of wanted to make something from scratch for the sake of the guide. So double adept quite quickly, sentry. So what I've been doing here is I started out with getting the sentry before the robo in previous games. And then I tried to use this adept as the original scout, and then as the second scout use the hallucination, and then after that hallucination then I set up and prepare for a Baneling Bust, for example. That was the idea. But I noticed that the window between the adept scout and the hallucination scout was too big. So I started getting the robo first instead of the sentry, which of course makes that window even larger. That means the hallucination is even later. But it also means I could start an immortal here, and then I'm safe, even though I don't see the Baneling Bust. And if it comes at this time, I have a force field instead of having a drained sentry. But I was struggling a bit this game because I didn't have the money to start the immortal. I just had too much gas and not enough minerals, I think. We also see that I tried to take a super fast third here with nothing to support it. Forge here, robo that couldn't build anything. No shield battery here, so this third get cancelled by circlings that were already built blindly. So he made a bunch of links here. And this is not necessarily a disaster losing the third, but I noticed that when I'm playing this build it's actually really bad. Because I don't really have anything going for me without a third. Suddenly I'm oversaturated here. I don't know what to spend my money on. There's nothing good to make. This immortal is not gonna just walk across the map and do stuff. It's way too late for that. So I was not happy with this cancel. So the main takeaway from this game was that cancelling the third when you play this robo opener is actually a lot worse than when you play Oracle, for example, because then you can just keep making oracles and then you have a lot of pressure on the other side of the map after you defend. So I just get more and more behind. Mutalisks completely catch me, and I don't have anything against that. Getting close to having settled on an opener at this point. I think this is maybe the eighth game. Trying a single gate build again. Noticed that I had to build a gate anyway, so right, so I'm gonna be talking more about macro details later. But this is an example of how you know that a build is bad. So here we have the money. We have the money to start something. I can absolutely start this gateway without cutting pro production. Or maybe I had to delay a chrono boost here. But then I kind of build this because I didn't have anything else that I wanted, so I just made it later and I needed this wall. So here I have the wall ready. So suddenly I'm in this very awkward position where I could have made this sooner, but I didn't. So then it's just late for no reason, which is a sign of a bad build. And here once again, I have the same problem that I had in the previous games where I made an adept, but because there were circlings here, I didn't want to send it to the other side of the map. If I would have had 2 adepts, I could have saved 1 here and scouted with 1. But this adept scout is way too late to see anything. So once again, I would be completely crushed by a Baneling Bust or a Ravager attack, probably. But going into the faster Robobay, getting the +1 fast, taking the third at a reasonable time after the prism, defending it, so playing more safe in that regard, except I missed my first scouting because the adept had to stay at home, which I did not predict. So the takeaway is that the single adept did not work at all, but expanding after the prism seemed very smooth. Like my economy is pretty good here. I have +2. No, I don't. Or yes, +2 on the way. And shields, apparently. And Colossus tech already. So I'm happy with those parts. Looks like I'm aiming for that late game instantly by going for a very, very high probe count as soon as I can and getting the extremely fast shield upgrades. Seeing the hive of the opponent, so I know that I'm allowed to do this. And here I noticed that it's really nice if I can clear creep. Once again, I haven't set up the prism counter. I'm too focused on the build that I'm messing up the key component. Probably still too focused on the details of the late game when you have these faster shield upgrades. So quite sloppy not setting up the prism counter. But what I found is that because I have such good pushback with this army, I have the potential to move to the middle of the map sometimes, in which case I can clear creep more easily. So it would be nice if I hit a proper timing instead of this absolute mess where I had some Archons at home, I have so much money in the bank, I didn't hit it together with any timings, I just had a single prism. So after this game I figured that it would be nice if I could hit some kind of timing. If I remember correctly what I was thinking. Right. And then this was kind of sad. Broodlords exposed and game kind of ended here. So we played it from replay to see, just continue working on that late game. Very long game. I'm gonna try to blast through it. But this should be getting towards the end. I think it's this game, which after this one I was ready to try it on ladder. So getting the second gateway fast is what I thought I would have done, but now it looks like I'm just messing this up once again. Right. It's from replay. It's the exact same opening. Silly me. So after this I tried it in ladder and played against Cham, which I still haven't refined an opener. I still haven't got a build, but I have some sort of setup where it makes sense to me. At least I have I have a potential timing to clear creep. I have the prism counter with strong units at home in case he attacks. The macro kind of makes sense. The opener is starting to look more safe and safe, and the late game is also starting to make sense, and it has a lot of synergy with with the prism salads counter idea as well. So I'm happy with all of those at this stage. So I'm ready to just use that and improvise anything else that I haven't done, such as the opening, such as the exact macro. But after that game against Cham, I figured I would also look at actually refining the build, which is not something you have to do. But I figured I would add it to the guide as well for completion, because some people like to make it more refined. But that makes it a lot harder to execute in some ways if you have a very clean build. And it also makes you a lot more predictable if you always do it exactly the same way. Right. Okay, so let's go back. I'm not paying attention to the game. So what happened instead was that... Okay, let's go back to where we started again. What I wanted to do at this point was to go for a start clearing creep with some prisms, which was a first for me, right here. So this was incredibly efficient, surprisingly efficient. This units just move so fast and just clear everything very quickly with their range, compared to zealots, because if you make zealots or DTs and try to clear creep like this, what happens is they all, like if you have 7 DTs here, they're all gonna chase this creep tumor, even though it's one shot, instead of spreading out like you want them to. But if you have the ranged units, it's a lot easier to, like especially immortals that one shot instantly. They just clear it a lot faster. And then you have the prisms to keep them safe. So that was this was a tactic that I discovered that could be implemented in the final strategy, is how I want to summarize that. And then we also have the blink DTs that I talked about before, which seem to be really good at clearing creep also. And I've been talking a lot about clearing creep, and I think that this game is a good example of why that matters. So I'm sitting here at all of the gases. All the gases I want. 7k gas bank. Lots of gateways. And 86 probes. And there's nothing he can do about it really, because I have DTs for defense, I have complete map control. Recall available, of course. Static defense up. And the constant counter threat, so, and his army is extremely slow, so it's very, very hard for the Zerg to do anything on my side of the map, really. And then we just see that over time, when there's no creep, it's very, very hard to take the space as well with the slow army. And that's kind of the win condition I'm playing for. Because what could happen here is I could go for Tempest, I could go for Storm. I have the money for it, I can do whatever I want really. And while I transition, sure I can counterattack if he attacks, but I can also just wait for my army to finish, because he has to go through so many bases before it becomes a problem. So you very much have the option to transition here, but I chose not to. We see that the infestors were quite good against the blink DTs, now that you can't blink away from fungal anymore. So what I found was that it would be really nice if you have a storm drop with High Templars, so that if he tries to defend against the DTs with just a bunch of infestors, you can just fly the prism in and feed back. I mean, if you have four High Templar in the prism, you can feed back 16 infestors. And the infestors can't run away because they're too slow. This is an example of something that's great to do in this experimentative phase, where you're not trying to do what's best. You're just seeing if tactics are good or not. So this is something that normally I'd never do because it's extremely scary. Single fungal could shut it down. Like I have kind of vision of this with hallucinations at some points. But it's good to just be a bit crazy and do things that you don't normally do and see if it works or not. And just because it worked doesn't mean it was a good idea. I still think it's crazy and I don't really like it. But perhaps I would have found something to change my mind. And the bank is just getting a little bit ridiculous at this point, and this base is not going up. So these bases are starting to mine out. And I guess to maybe there's not much more to look at from this game except how to actually play this late game style, which is something I could talk about as well. We need the constant counter threats. Right. This is an important one. I said that it was very hard for the opponent to do something on my side of the map. And I guess this base is maybe an exception since it's not really my side of the map. But as soon as the units go here, they're essentially trapped because these units are much faster and there's no retreat anymore. And I can easily surround from both sides. Always having plenty of observers is quite important to creep clear and keep track of the opponent's movements. Here also, by the way, this army is also exposed to this. Just one prism with some High Templar in it flying in. We'd be able to feed back a bunch of them. Because you can't neural a prism if it's got stuff inside of it. Oh, okay, so this one, once again, using this move of splitting the opponent's army in two. We have some pressure here. And then suddenly, this army is too slow to get over here. We just fly over, straight here, to cut this army off. DTs preparing for a fight on the other side with some splits. And all of these units are very dead. And this army is not even close to getting back. Once again taking a cost-efficient fight. Maybe staying a bit too long, but I can pick these units up with the prism if the fungal stops. Somehow not killing this base, even though I had a million DTs. Not sure how that happened. But yeah, mining just getting worse and worse for the opponent. And I think after this game, I kind of realized the value of having a huge map. Because I get to mine from all of these bases, I get to mine from all of these gases, and at the same time, it's just making it worse for the opponent that has to defend on so many spread out locations. And base racing would be crazy with this army. You have Broodlords, Infestors that has to go through every single base. And it cannot split up, because if half of the army is far away from the other half, then prisms jump on top of one of the halves. While I can kill these bases in 25 seconds with blink DTs. Every single one. Kind of like we see here, but Freeman decides to go back. And then I make a terrible judgment call here. I didn't think the Broodlords were that far back. And I lose a bunch of these units. Should run to the left, run to the right, and walk into lurkers, change my mind, and then blocked by Broodlings. So extremely incost efficient for me. Not that it really matters if we look at the bank. Also not extremely important for learning purposes. I mean this game is pretty much over. This was a funny moment I just want to share before jumping to the next game. I figured that, okay, so he's got a lot of Broodlords, a lot of Infestors. I'm only on 134 supply. I need to distract him while I remax. And then okay, so let's counter with some Zealots. And then my Zealot warp-in stopped, and I didn't really understand why, and it's because I was maxed. So I could have just made Archons in the first place. Didn't have to buy time to max out. That was a first for me. So yeah, what you can take away from that is that I really enjoy playing this style. It's a lot more fun than sitting on a Tempest army, waiting for the Zerg to choose when to fight. I'm gonna jump to the next game. This video is gonna be so long. This game was ladder game. So finally I get to test it against a very good opponent. Let's see which build I chose this time. Right, so double gateway, I think that's good. Cyber, quite bad wall, but that's not really the point here. Robo before the sentry. At 100 gas, get to second sentry, and then things are starting to line up. Prism before Immortal, not the safest, but not. I haven't focused on making a safe build yet. So extremely good start for me here. I didn't play exactly perfectly safe because I made a Prism instead of Immortal. The Adepts got a bit lucky and got in to counterattack, killing 6 workers. And the third is up extremely early, so everything's going my way. Robo Bay shield upgrade, so I'm again going instantly for this late game style, it looks like. Am I setting up a Prism for counter? Yes. Okay, so finally I learned my lesson. I don't have the gateway count yet to properly do anything with this, but at least I'm trying, it looks like. Except I'm swapping it for a disruptor. Gateway is coming up now extremely late. But I guess the only thing I really wanted was to try the late game style against Chum. So if you're satisfied with the previous game in terms of late game, you could just skip this one. I don't think this one looks very different. Except there's Ultralisks. I figured that I made the classic mistake of thinking too much about counters. I figured that Archons are pretty good against Hydras. I mean, not really, but they're decent against Hydras, and Archons are good against Ultralisks. But Archons are not good against Ultralisks plus Hydralisks, because Ultralisks are at the front with lots of health, and Hydralisks are at the back with lots of DPS. So I don't think this was a good composition choice by me. If you watched my first YouTube video about unit control, that was I just made the exact same mistake, which was the example of how not to think in that video. But yeah, everyone, or I shouldn't say everyone. What I mean is StarCraft is hard, so even if you know something, you're still gonna make the mistakes. Knowing is much less than half the battle when it comes to StarCraft. So yeah, getting a bit overrun here, but then just killing these units for free. And I do have these free Archons going for me. So I'm not quite sure how I didn't just win here. I guess I should have either attacked or went back. But instead I kind of just kill a base. Honestly, this game is kind of long. I guess the only takeaway I got from it is that I didn't win this game, but I still noticed that all of the tactics that I was relying on, all of the tactics that I wanted, such as clearing creep, they still worked against a very good player. So that's all I really wanted to learn from this. Yeah, I just really need to not make pure Archon against Hydralisks with Ultralisks. Is all I had to fix. Let's not drag this out too much. So if you're just interested in the strategy, it is kind of complete by now. I know how to play it. I know that it's nice together with the timing, but I haven't refined the timing yet. I haven't refined an opener that's safe yet. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go against AI and make sure that I have a efficient build that is safe in the opening, that takes a third at a decent time, that also transitions into some kind of nice timing. So that's what I spend the next couple of games against AI to try to do. So if you're not interested in how exactly to refine a build, you can skip this part, because we're completely swapping topic here. So this is just macro oriented now. Could split it into 2 videos, but I think I'm just gonna keep going. A bit late on this gateway. So I'm gonna try to talk about what is good macro, what is bad macro, what kind of adjustments can you make. I haven't really prepared this part, but I'm gonna do my best. And so here we see, let's see, adept. I don't quite have the gas for the robo yet, I'm waiting for it. Building probes. Okay, so I'm going back to the sentry build. I'm thinking that maybe if I chrono boost, I can get the sentry fast enough to scout at a good time with it, is what I'm thinking. So I have the adept scouting. This adept could in theory be faster. I forgot the first gateway. And what I'm thinking here is I'm getting a shield battery just to be safe. I'm building extra gateway units just to be safe. And this robo became a lot later than I wanted it to be, than I expected, just because I didn't have the gas for it. At this time, I have 100 gas, so I could make a robo. Or if I start a sentry, I didn't have the gas anymore. So we see here that I wanted to build a robo, but I didn't have the gas for it. So quite late. And then what happens is I make this hallucination. I take the third before it scouts. So once again, I'm in this exact problematic spot where I kind of have defense ready, but not really. Maybe if I put the Stalker in the wall together with the shield battery, I'm safe against the Baneling Bust. Maybe, but the structures are kind of exposed. I don't have much DPS in the back here, and I don't have any production going for me really. This third, but more importantly, like this third cannot be protected because I don't have a prism. So just the link flood that I lost against previously when I played a similar build would have crushed this. So I'm not happy with this. Not happy with this build. So the takeaway here was that even though I made the sentry as soon as I could, it wasn't fast enough. But I still tried to look at timing options. I know that +2 together with Colossus is nice because you one-shot links. So that's kind of what I went for. Once again, Prism is not set up for counters. These gateways are kind of late, so I'm not ready for this counter. The charge is way too late for the counter. So these are all problems that I kind of wanted, but weren't able to fix it all together. But we see here this timing. Charge lined up together with +2-ish. We have Archons for a little bit of anti-air. We have kind of a strong army. So I'm happy with this army. I'm happy with the fact that as I'm hitting this timing, I'm spending my money completely. So I can invest all that I want into this timing. So here I have options. I can either get these gases, I can get this second forge and some shield upgrades, or I can just warp in even more units. So that part I am happy with. So that's the takeaway for the next time. And I see that this kind of timing with one Colossus and one Disruptor would hit at, let's see, I can move out here. +2 is not quite done. So that's an important takeaway also. We need +1 and +2 a little bit faster. I didn't chrono it much, so for next time I try to chrono that a bit more so that it lines up around 7:30 for this timing. And that's my plan going in for next game. Try to fix the early game so that I'm safe somehow. So that I can take the third also in a safe way. But also make some changes to the timing so that I have the +2 ready in time. And of course I still haven't forgotten about the Prism counter, even though I'm not doing it much. I still know that I need to throw it in somehow, which means that instead of timing charge out with the timing, I actually want charge sooner. So that's something I also want. Okay, so this time I get the second gateway faster. Once again, getting the sentry before the robo, it looks like. Let's look at this in detail. Okay. So what happened this game is I mined more gas than I did previously. Because I was, like I talked about, my robo wasn't quite ready. Because I didn't have the gas, because I wanted to make the sentry really fast. So I just mined a bit more gas. We see here that I don't have 3 in gases, so I have some flexibility with that. So that allows me to get the robo and the sentry very fast. But then I run into a different problem when I got both of this, which is that robo finishes, but the hallucination is not ready, so I don't know if I need to build an immortal or not. Previously, when I got the robo late, I could choose if I wanted a prism or an immortal, based on what the hallucination saw. But it was too late to get an immortal by then, so it's kind of bad either way. And here I'm just waiting for information, and the robo is just sitting here idle. And I can't really take the third when I want it to be built, so once again, lots of problems with the opening, lots of things to work on. But once again, we want to try this build. I think I'm chronoboosting this more than before. I think I saw a chronoboost end recently at least. Twilight seems to be late once again. Prism? Okay, so at least the prism is prepared across the map, and I have, let's see, no, still not very many gateways. Let's look at this gateway timing, by the way, because I think I could have made it faster. spending the gas on the sentries. Quite a bit of spare gas, so once again, this is not a great build. Getting a very late awkward immortal. So this is the sentry count I'm kind of aiming for, because I want a very strong defensive army. Right, but these gateways are very late. Perhaps I could have delayed these gateways, these gases, to get the gateways faster, so that I actually have some kind of threat here. And also, if you remember the gas that I wasn't spending previously, it would have been nice to have the twilights a lot faster, so that I could have had charge done here, I could have had the gateways done faster, and then I would have actually had this set up without sacrificing anything else, just by getting these gases slightly later. Okay, so this time it kind of timed out. We have the +2 finishing at the perfect time. We're hitting a lot later than before. Because we have more workers than before. We have a 4th base finished. And we also lack gateways here. We only have 6, soon 8. So I'm struggling a little bit with spending money. Or at least, so what usually happens here is you scout and then you decide if you want to spend all money on the timing, then you want to be able to do that. If you want to transition at the same time, well, then you do that. But you want the option to go all out with the attack, and I don't think I had that option here. Or actually 7 gateways ready. I think it actually lined up quite well this time. Right, but I had double robo here, which wasn't doing very much. Because I only attacked with two colossi anyway. So a couple of things going better. We had the prism ready for the counter, but the charge was still too late. Opening once again very sloppy, like trying to figure out this start. If I mined more gas, then I had a problem of the robo finishing too fast to decide what to build before the hallucination scouts. So I think what I decided was that I'm just gonna always build an immortal, and then I can build like before the hallucination scouts. And if I do that, I don't have to rush for the sentry anymore, because I'm always gonna be safe. So then I can mine less gas again, and I can get the robo before the sentry, build that immortal, and then just hallucination scout slightly later, because I don't need it as fast anymore. That was my solution to that micro problem. Let's see if I realized it already, or if that comes in the next game. Yeah, okay, so here instantly starting the robo. Having a little bit less gas than last time maybe. Sentry instantly followed up. And the previous time, because I mined more gas, I was not able to build this immortal here. But here I can get it instantly, and I can chrono boost it, so that my prism can arrive a bit faster. And we see that this actually lines up a bit differently. If there's a Baneling bust around this time, which the adepts would scout, I can force field. And if this guys get sniped by like 10 Zerglings, I can still use this hallucination scout as soon as this immortal is out, because I can put the immortal in the wall. And then I don't need the sentry energy anymore. So I think this lines up very nicely. The only problem still would be this third base, which is not really protected by the prism. This might look like the same game over and over, but there are some subtle changes and there are some problems that I'm talking about that I'm trying to address. This time we have another sign of a really bad build. We have robos, or we have like this key structures that should be producing, which I can't afford to produce from. So they're just sitting here, and that's really bad. You usually want them to always produce, or at least produce, and then you hit the timing, and then maybe you produce only from gateways after that, because they're too slow to reinforce, or something like that. But at this time, I want Colossi. I have the gas for Colossi. That's also a sign of a really bad build, when you have lots of gas, which you can't spend. So I'm not happy with this. What I wanted to do was I wanted to get these gateways faster, and I wanted to get this charge faster to set up for this counter. But it didn't work out. This Colossi came out after I had to wait for those minerals to come to me. And it's just quite awkward overall. So that's something I need to fix for next time. However, what happened this game was I made these gateways before the 4th base, which I felt, in terms of macro, that felt a lot better for the timing. I think one of the previous games I got the 4th base before the gateways, and then I was delayed more than I wanted to be. And we see this pattern emerging that I get this forge preparing for shield upgrades at the same time as I'm hitting the timing. Not before. So then I have the option to not make this if I want more units, or I can make this and transition. So this is like pretty much after I know I have enough units to move out to the middle of the map and clear creep, instead of getting it before. And I'm also seeing that this probe count seems pretty nice, because I can saturate the space very quickly, and I'm seeing that because I'm playing so gas heavy, if I take this 4th base around this time, I can take these gases before it finishes. Again, if I don't want to warp in units with the timing. So that's not something I did here, apparently. But that's something I try to do later, at least. So, I still haven't figured out, or rather, what I did figure out so far is that I know exactly how to open. I can get the robo at the perfect time. I had the money for the sentry. So in terms of gas, it lined up absolutely perfectly. So I think I just played from replay this game. At the stage where I was still very happy, which was around the time I took a 3rd, I think. Okay, no, maybe I made some changes to the build opening as well. Yes, it looks like it. Okay, so here we see the robo finishing at exactly 100 gas after the sentry. So this is this build is starting to really become very smooth. Except for the supply block. But that's a minor detail. That's easy to just go into replay and build a pylon 3 seconds faster. Getting the prism instantly. Twilight Council way before I need it for +2, so It looks like I'm actually setting up for the counter strength of this prism this time. Not using it though. Again, a sign of a bad build, but that was just bad attention for me. Setting up these gateways before these gases, like I talked about before. So this is starting to look like what I've been talking about. And we see that the robo has been quite active. It made a prism, and then it's produced 2 observers. So I didn't want any downtime on this. So this is what I learned for the next build, I think. Because I only really want 1 observer, probably. I got this Twilight very fast and the Bay quite late. So here, it would have been nice if I could have just started the Colossus. Because I had gas to make this Bay faster. But we solved 2 of the 3 problems. We wanted a safe opening, which we have. We wanted the counter prism with charge not super late, and gateways to actually warp in if we want to warp in. But we still haven't really made a good timing, so that's what we're working on now. Robo not really doing anything, waiting for gas, getting prism speed for some reason. Don't think that's the right decision. Robo's still not working. Okay, so here it looks like I attacked with 2 disruptors. Let's go back. Chronoboost is 2 disruptors instantly when the Bay finishes, I think. So that's good, and I think it's good to chronoboost this one as well because it spends a lot of money per time. Finishing this one and moving out, hopefully. A little bit slow, but right. So here I have a couple of problems with this timing. First of all, I don't think it's a good composition to have lots of sentries and lots of disruptors with basically no support. Because the opponent can run in just a couple of units and you don't have anything to kill it. And you need to do a bunch of force fields just for a couple of units, and then you can't really do anything. It's very easy to dodge disruptors if there isn't any incentive for you to have a large army attack in. So I kind of want a Colossus. I also have this +2 timing out with this, which is kind of strange for a disruptor timing. I'm hitting very late also with this additional warp-ins. And finally I only have 1 prism. I wanted 1 counter prism, and I need a prism with the timing itself. So once again, I have a lot of things I need to fix for next time, for the next attempt. It's always a lot harder to actually do it than you think it is. You think that you're just, well, I'm just gonna get the Robo Bay faster. I'm gonna do everything else like I did correctly, and then I'm gonna send the prism out and make gateways faster. But there's always so much to think about that you usually need a lot of attempts at this. But it's nice that you can play from replay, so this doesn't take that much time actually. Like I'm just really spending just 5 minutes per game that I'm going through when I'm playing them. And I think I played about 9 games. So again, using this opener, which I'm happy with. Getting the Robo Bay faster, like I talked about, so that I can, instead of building 2 observers, I can actually use the Robo for useful things. I realized that I needed 2 prisms, so I see that, well, I have Robo downtime, so I'm gonna get a prism. Skipping the observer, it looks like. Getting the Colossus up, having the gateways ready, again having charge way before the +2, so I'm all set up for the counter. After the Colossus, getting 1 disruptor and moving out with this one, I think. No, getting 2 disruptors. Alright. Getting the last gateways, moving out, waiting for this disruptor. And I see that +2 is a little bit late. I'm actually hitting at 8 minutes now, which it was a little bit disappointing because the first game I played, I hit at like 7:25, and 35 seconds is a big deal. But a lot of things were going well. I had this prism set up. I had a good start. What I figured was I wanted to hit faster, and I thought that 2 disruptors, maybe I don't need that. So I thought I'm just gonna cut 1 disruptor. And to be honest, I think that was my last good realization. Okay, so what I also did was in this window where I make the second prism, I think I swapped it for an observer because this prism kind of wants an observer to clear creep. So I think my end decision was to chronobus this one as soon as possible, swap this one for an observer, keep everything else up exactly like this, chronobus this one as much as possible really, some downtime here so that's also sloppy, and then make the prism last and then go across the map, and then you can hit the timing like that, and you also have the 4th if you want to. And I think that's what I settled with. Just gonna go into the last one. No need to watch me fail at doing what I wanted to do. Should be this one. The final step, or the next step after you have a build that you're happy with, would be to make sure that it's cheese proof. And this time I figured I didn't really care about pool first builds because I know that Nexus first is not safe. But I wanted to test it against a hatch first link flood and a hatch first bending bust. And that went well. If it doesn't go well, you can read the guide for kind of how to deal with that. I think I will just end by showing this build. So getting the Robo Bay even faster than before, following up the prism with an observer. A little bit of downtime here, so maybe if I could get the bay faster that would be even better. Taking these gases, maybe I should have done that after these gates, but these gates are not that late. A little bit of downtime from the Robo. So I'm just pointing out mistakes still because this is not a super clean build. The more clean you make it, the more difficult it will be to execute. But I think this is a good compromise. With it doesn't take forever to refine it. I just had to play about 10 games against the AI, which really is just 5 minutes per game with the replay feature. And also it's not impossible to execute, because I just need to remember the robo ordering of things and the initial opener. And we see here that finally I have this good setup of a prism for a counter. I had charge since a long time ago. I had a bunch of early gateways. I'm hitting this timing at 7:40 instead of 8 minutes, which some of the bad ones did. +2, finished. Colossus, Disruptor, Prism with the army. So this is where I settled. I'm sure that if I try to squeeze this robo a little bit, maybe chrono boost it, maybe get this bay a little bit faster, maybe get the Prism before the Disruptor, since I didn't have the gas at that exact time. Doing these tiny things, I'm sure that I could squeeze this build to hit at maybe 15 seconds faster. But I don't think that's too important, because it makes it too hard to execute. I think this is good enough. I already achieved the main purposes. Yeah, right. Okay, so I'm just gonna talk about the cheese proofing for like 2 minutes, and I'm not gonna end the video because it's way too long. And it's also finished. So my suggestion for a bending bust, if that would be a problem, would be to, first of all, we have the adept to scout, and they would see something around this time. They would see a link flood, but let's pretend they don't. Let's pretend they don't see a link flood because the links went here, around this path. In that case, they would have to shade in, and maybe they see the lack of drones in about 10 seconds. So what you could do, if you want to be super safe with this build, if you're afraid of a Baneling bust, and you still want to use this build, you don't want to throw all of this away that you just worked on, you can make a small compromise to the build, which is, well, let's build a full wall here, and then we scout in 10 seconds, or probably even go 5 seconds back so we can actually use it. Here, let's build a full wall, and then we scout, and then we see there's no problem, we just cancel it. Or there is a Baneling bust, then we keep it. So you can make tiny adjustments like that if you run into problems, rather than trying to change the order of things, maybe getting the sentry faster, maybe trying to get a stalker in the wall. Like, oftentimes you don't have to make a massive change like that. So yeah, like trying to find the smallest change that you can make to make it safe against the problems that you find. I think that's it. Everything else should be in the written guide. If there's anyone still watching, I just want to say thank you for watching, and thank you for going through these guides. This is the last one that I'm doing, at least for a very long time. It has been a pleasure. I'm not able to keep it up. And yeah, I will see you for the next video, whatever that might be.